sir.
Thank you, Glenn.
You're very welcome.
Thank you to the Trump Club of Marion County for having me here today. My name is Tommy Thompson. I'm running for re-election, County Court Judge in the Group 3 seat. It's been my honor, it's been my privilege the last 6 years to serve the people of Marion County as a County Court Judge. I ran for County Court Judge 6 years ago as an Assistant State Attorney, and that was most of my legal experience is as a prosecutor, Assistant State Attorney, where I prosecuted pretty much every kind of case from traffic up to the more serious cases where we had trials and convictions, bomb trials, home invasion robberies, armed robberies. And so I was really proud to serve the people of Marion County and to get the experience working for Brad King. I also ran for the bench with a couple years of civil practice experience. I was a medical malpractice defense attorney primarily. However, I did also handle a handful of criminal defense cases. So I felt like I knew what it was like to be in court, to represent somebody, not only represent the state of Florida as a prosecutor, but represent the criminally accused and know the fear that sometimes people have when they come before the court charged with a criminal offense. So based on what I thought was a good mix of experience, Ms. Mackey Barnes, who you heard can't be with us today, she essentially filed to challenge County Judge John Futch, who'd been serving for 24 years. Judge Futch decided he was going to go ahead and retire, and I thought that would be my opportunity perhaps to continue my service to Marion County as a County Court Judge, because I agree with Judge Ritterhoff-Williams. I think community involvement, community service is important. If Mr. Fiorello is going to ask me about volunteerism, I can tell you about that, but I've served my profession as far as I've served on the grievance committee as the chairperson, involving disciplinary complaints, involving attorneys. No, I've never been disciplined myself, fortunately. But you get a good insight into what the attorneys that are getting into trouble, what they're doing, what's going wrong in their lives. I've served as the president of the Inn of Court. I was the founder, first president of the Young Lawyers section. I created the Marion County Young Lawyers sections for other young lawyers to have an opportunity for volunteerism and community leadership. I'm a proud member of the Ocala Lions Club. So I thought I had the right mix of experience, and so I ran for county judge. And I was fortunate enough to win the election, and I've really been honored to serve. I'd like to continue my service to the people as a county court judge. I currently run one of the 4 diversion courts, the mental health court program, and I'm very excited about some of the things we have coming up in the future. A very large grant has been given to Lutheran Health Services to administer to our mentally ill in Marion County. And right now, currently I'm a prospective member of the board of directors at the centers. The center's not too far down this road, Airport Road, that serves our mentally ill. And as the mental health court judge, it's really been a really eye-opening experience, but it's been very rewarding to see some of the mentally ill that come into the criminal courts get treated, get better, and stay better, stay well. And this helps us. Not only as people in the community, we don't want untreated mentally ill. I think everybody knows why, but there's also a tremendous expense to taxpayers. When these people are arrested over and over again for the types of crimes that the mentally ill often find themselves in trouble for, you take somebody mentally ill with special medication needs, put them in that Marion County jail, oftentimes we're spending well in excess of $100 a day, and that's a shared cost to all of us as taxpayers. So that when we get them in my mental health court, when we get them services, get them treatment, get them medication, we keep them off the streets, we keep them out of our jails, and we a lot of times can have somebody that can be a functioning, healthy, productive member of the community. And that's been exciting. A quick anecdote, I had a gentleman that came before my court. He was literally talking to the lights in the ceiling. We got him in mental health court with proper treatment, totally functional. I went to a peer-to-peer support graduation ceremony with Judge McCune, and I saw him, this boy that was talking to the light in the ceiling, I saw him laughing and talking with this group of friends that he had made. And I said to Judge McCune, I said, that's amazing. That was the young man that was talking to the light in the ceiling. He said, that's the smartest guy in this room right now. And I said, what do you mean, Judge? He says, that man is a chemical engineering graduate from Cornell University. Wow. But they say with great intelligence, hyperintelligence, comes greater incidence of mental illness. So this boy right now is, like I said, we've got him back on the right track, and mental health court was a big part of that. Judge Ritterhoff-Williams with DUI court, Judge Lant with the drug court, Judge McCune with our veterans treatment court. We are fortunate in Marion County. There is no other county of our size in the state of Florida that has all 4 diversion courts. And it takes extra time, it takes extra attention when we run these diversion courts. But folks, I've also tried to be respectful. I think I'm the only judge in the Marion County Courthouse. We start court with the Pledge of Allegiance because I think we should honor the Republic, stands for the constitutional right, stands for that right to a jury trial that we're all there as judges for. And also, when we start court, I tell them, if you have questions, let me know. I'll treat you with respect. And if you have questions about me, ask Kirsten, ask some of the people in the room, familiar faces. What is Tommy Thompson like? And I think that they're good things. Folks, hope to get your vote August 28th. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
And you've already heard all the other questions. And I want to also
Seems unfair now. I can take a second and third. But I also say like the batting order, like when you see the pitcher like a couple times in the batting order, I feel like I'm in that position.
I also want to explain this. Each one of you is going to have most likely different answers to these questions.
Yes, sir.
So, don't say, well, so-and-so said it this way, I'll answer the same way. No, you need to, and I know you better than
I'm not that kind of guy.
I know that. I know that. What kind of jobs, interests, or volunteer activities did you pursue during law school and present?
In law school, you spent a lot of time studying. So we were John Marshall Bar Association, University of Florida Law School is where I went to law school, and I'm a proud Gator graduate. But so we had some jungle work, which a couple of volunteer activities. I did serve on honor court, where we had students who were involved in some kind of disciplinary matter, similar to the grievance committee. I dealt with that in law school as well. So not a whole lot of volunteerism in law school, but in the community, Marion County Young Lawyers, I created a debate tournament for high school kids because there were no debate tournaments at the time for high school kids to come in and to have public speaking experience. I was given the benefit of that as a youth in Clearwater growing up. Clearwater Bar Association puts on a great debate tournament, and I basically stole their idea, implemented that. The great debate tournament, we just had the 15th year. So that was pretty exciting. We helped create that. Justice Teaching, I'm the coordinator for the Justice Teaching Institute. That's a program from the Florida Supreme Court that tries to put a lawyer or a judge in every Marion County public school that needs additional civics instruction and wants one of these volunteers. Lions Club, we volunteer all sorts of things in the community. And really my main volunteer efforts in Marion County really involve education. Right now I am the mock trial team coach for Lake Weir High School. We just put that team together. This year, it was a pretty big time investment. I think I probably spent around 50 hours probably this year, and probably next year we'll probably double that effort because we went to the finals against Trinity Catholic, and they pretty much smoked us. Judge Ritterhoff-Williams was one of the judges, Mr. Avon also. He said a very kind thing the other night about the participants, but I think he was being a little too generous because some of my kids were just not on their A game, so we're going to have to try a little bit harder next year, but that's a big time investment in that. We the People is a mock congressional hearing simulation. If anybody knows Doug Oswald, he goes by the nickname, if anybody knows Buddy Oswald, he's basically the former lawyer that got involved in educational efforts for the public school system, and he's basically the coordinator for all those efforts. But anything that Mr. O's ever needed as far as moot court, mock trial, We the People, try to be there for that. So I enjoy volunteering, and I agree with you. I think it's important for a judge to do so.
Thank you. What do you consider your greatest strengths and weaknesses?
I think my greatest strengths and weaknesses, I'm assuming we're going to talk about as a judge, because I think personally maybe a little different, but as a judge, I think it's patience. I think it is respectfulness for the litigants that come before the court, and I think ultimately it's fairness. I think as a former prosecutor, as a former defense attorney, as somebody that has litigated as plaintiff and defendant in civil cases, kind of like Mr. Rampito was saying, you talk about both sides of the aisle, handling different types of litigation, I think helps you as far as being able to develop a sense of fairness, and having sat in both sides, plaintiff, defendant, state defense, I think it gives you better insights into how to treat people as you would want to be treated, which is one of the things that I try to pride myself on.
Thank you. Your number 3 question is? Have you ever been disciplined? I know you've already answered this. Disciplined by the Florida Bar?
Nope. I've had a lot of discipline complaints for other attorneys, but no. Now that is not to say, I should clarify to say that as a prosecutor, were complaints filed against me by people that I've prosecuted and convicted and put in state prison? Yeah, I had a couple. But the discipline process, as a former grievance committee chairperson, I can tell you it basically starts with a complaint being filed with the Florida Bar. Florida Bar has investigators. They will conduct an initial investigation, and they have bar counsel that reviews the work of the investigators. If there are findings of probable cause continuous throughout this investigatory process, in other words, some reasonable basis or belief that somebody violated some ethical standard, then ultimately it gets sent to a panel, a grievance committee that is composed. You have some attorneys, you have some lay people from the community that come in to review the case, basically a review panel. And so having served in that, it's an eye-opening experience. So have complaints been filed against Tommy Thompson as a prosecutor, people I put in state prison? Yes. Did the investigator find that I violated any ethical standard? No, and the investigation would end at that initial stage with the investigator at the Florida Bar saying there's nothing to this. Somebody in prison has nothing to do, decided to file a motion. That may be a little dismissive, but that's the way I always looked at the complaints filed against me. I'm a little biased in that if you accuse me of an ethical violation.
Why should voters support you over your opponent?
I truly, genuinely think I have the best mix of experience and my credentials and my qualifications and what I bring to the job. I believe that I was the better candidate 6 years ago. That's why I stood in front of the people of Marion County, asked for your vote to serve as a Marion County Court Judge. I bring all of that experience, but also 6 years now of judicial experience that included 1 year. I was exclusively the civil law judge for the county court. Judge Leann did the same thing. He did it for a year. I did it for a year. Judge Leann's a civil practitioner. That's what he did before he took the bench. He practiced civil law. I was mainly a prosecutor. So I really didn't understand how much I did not really know about the types of civil claims that come to county court. Things like collections and bank and wage garnishments and levies and attachment of assets and all sorts of things that I really didn't understand. Prosecution didn't teach me about that at the state attorney's office. I really didn't learn about that. Medical malpractice defense works pretty highly specialized litigation. So I've learned a lot, and bringing all that experience with me now, I'm confident that I'm the right person for this job.
Thank you. Do you possess any expertise in a field other than law?
I'm almost inclined to defer to my wife, Renee, who's with us today, because she might be able to tell you. Because sometimes you might be a bit of a dilettante, think that you're really good at something, and you find out you're really just, you're a dabbler. But I'm pretty good at cooking, so I think I have some culinary skills, Renee.
I would agree with that.
Pretty handy with a firearm. And I would also tell you that as my dad was a flooring man. I grew up in Pinellas County down in Clearwater, and my dad did flooring. I grew up pretty poor, but I can tell you that I can do flooring. Carpet, tile, vinyl, if y'all need laminate flooring done. It's also good to have a backup in case the whole judicial thing doesn't work out. If Mackey Barnes work, might need a career that I can fall back on. So again, I can do flooring also. But.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind.
Yes, sir. I'm allowed to moonlight, I believe. So if anybody needs, we can talk after the meeting.
Do you feel the war on drugs has been effective?
This is the one I wasn't really sure how to. I would say largely, sadly, I would have to tell you that I think no. If you talk about a war on drugs, I don't know. I think, drugs, when you talk about drugs are inanimate objects, right? Drugs are used by people. Addiction is a problem that's experienced and suffered by people. But would we endorse a war on guns? A war on a gun? Gun's an object. Guns are used by somebody. Maybe for good, maybe for bad. Drugs are used by people, sometimes for good, sometimes not for good. So I think if we maybe reframe it and look at it more like it should be a war on addiction. If we look at addiction as the problem, then maybe we can start to maybe make a little bit more progress as far as coming to grips with what we may have to do as far as having more meaningful intervention in the lives of addicts. Because I can tell you, as the mental health court judge, one of the things we deal with is not just the mentally ill, but we deal with people that are mentally ill with addiction issues and substance problems. And that old, people that are familiar with what I'm talking about, dual diagnosis issues. And treaters and experts will tell you dual diagnosis is pretty much the toughest problem to crack, because you're trying to deal with two serious problems simultaneously. And I agree with Judge Ritterhoff-Williams that sometimes jail, imprisonment, incarceration is a tool. It's kind of, it's an arrow in the quiver. It's in the toolbox of things that we would, utilize to try to correct. Maybe that's a wake-up call. Maybe you incarcerate somebody, a shock incarceration, somebody that hasn't been in jail before. I'll tell you, how many people have been in the Marion County Jail? It's not a pleasant place. It's really not. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be pleasant. It's not supposed to be. You don't want people going to jail to have a good time. It's supposed. So you put people in jail, sometimes you can make an influence on them. But somebody that's been to jail 50, 60, 100 times, you're not going to have the same effect. So at some point you have to think, okay, well, what are the treatment, interventions? What are the modalities as far as, counseling, pharmaceuticals? If y'all know about, Vivitrol and, some of these other, drugs that maybe, over time we'll have more access to, to pharmaceutical interventions. A lot of my mentally ill, if we can get them medicated to deal with the mental illness, then we can kind of get at the substance issues. So it's kind of maybe sometimes to break down one problem to then address the other. Long-term injection medications oftentimes help, because if you got, oral medications, they'll forget to take them. So a lot of times it is really it's a mixed approach that I think we have to take. But if we just say, war on drugs, and I hope and let me also clarify to say that I'm not talking about the people that prey upon addiction. I'm not talking about dealers. I'm not talking about traffickers. I'm not talking about the people that make a living and that profit from the misery and lately with fentanyl and the rest of the deaths that are occurring in our community, and I've been serving with Judge Leann. We've been on the opioid task force trying to get a handle on this problem in Marion County, and it's a difficult situation. But to just think that we're just going to incarcerate our way out of this problem, I think is naive. I don't think that's practicable. I think that incarceration is one of those tools we have to look at in the grand formula to beat the problem. But has the war on drugs worked? We spent a lot of money. We've incarcerated, a lot of people, but the problems are still here, folks. I'd have to say, it doesn't look like it's working to me.
And unconstitutional.
Okay. If the Constitution and your religious beliefs are not the same, which side will you lean toward?
It's hard to say. As a born-again Christian, as a believer, I've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution of the state of Florida. I've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And so if my personal religious beliefs do not square with something that is required by the Constitution, my personal beliefs would have to take, they'd have to step to the side. And I would have to uphold what is required by law and by the Constitution, because that's my job as a lawyer, as a judge.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Closing comments, please.
Folks, again, for the last 6 years, it's been my opportunity, but really, it's been a real privilege, but it's been my pleasure. I've really enjoyed being a county court judge, and I appreciate the people trusting me with this position over the last 6 years. Every day I go into court and I put on that robe. I think if you ask anybody that's been in my courtroom, it doesn't change who I am. I don't become a different person. I'm still the same me. I want people to come to court. I want them to be treated with respect. I want them to be treated with dignity. If you noticed what happened right before I got up here to speak, what was Glenn telling you about? His good experience with Ruby Moore in the jury services room. Most people that come to court come to see a county court judge. Sarah and Bob, if Jim McKean was here, they would tell you most people coming to the courthouse are coming to county court. They're not going to circuit. They're not going to family. They're coming to see us in county court. And if you have a bad experience in county court, if you are mistreated, if you don't feel like you were treated fairly, if you didn't get justice, what do you think is going to happen when you leave that courthouse? You're going to do exactly what Glenn Fiorello did. You're going to tell other people. If you're part of a group, an organization, you're going to tell the other people. You're going to go home that night, have supper, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers about it. They probably tell other people. And so one negative experience goes through the community, and one person that didn't get treated fairly. So I try to be mindful of that. And when I'm on the bench, I try to treat everybody the way I would want to be treated myself, and truly humble myself as a public servant. Remember and keep mindful that I'm there simply to call balls and strikes. We're not there for the lawyers. We're not there at the courthouse for the judges. We are there for the people, especially in county court. Small claims, a lot of times people aren't even coming in with lawyers. So it's not about lawyers making money. It's not about some big case that's going to make the news. It's not about some fancy opinion that's going to appear in some, appellate law book for, law students to study for the next 50 years so we can show what learned jurists we are. It's not what we do in county court. We help people solve problems. It's been my privilege to help people solve these problems. I hope to get to do it for another 6 years, and I really appreciate y'all having me out here this morning.